In the middle of San Francisco Bay sits a fortress that once held America's most feared criminals. Surrounded by icy waters and swirling currents, it was built to be escape-proof. But Alcatraz was more than a prison. It was a battlefield of wills, guards against gangsters, survival against despair. Welcome to the Rock, the island of no return. Long before Alcatraz became infamous, it was a barren rock discovered in 1775 by Spanish explorer Juan Manuel de Ayala, who named it La Isla de los Alcatrazes, Island of the Pelicans. The island's isolation made it perfect for military use. By the mid-1800s, the U.S. Army built a fortress there, guarding San Francisco Bay during the Gold Rush era. Cannons lined its cliffs, and soldiers lived in barracks where convicts would one day pace. Alcatraz's destiny as a place of confinement had already begun. By the 1850s, Alcatraz's guns were never fired in war, but its walls found a new purpose. The U.S. Army converted the island into a military prison. Soldiers who deserted, mutinied, or broke the code of discipline were shipped here. Soon, Native American leaders resisting westward expansion were also confined on the Rock. The island's reputation as a place of exile grew. The Army's prison population swelled, laying the groundwork for the transition that would make Alcatraz the most notorious federal prison in America. In 1934, amid the chaos of Prohibition-era gang wars and Depression-era crime waves, the U.S. government needed a place for its most dangerous prisoners. Alcatraz, isolated and already fortified, was chosen. The Department of Justice and the Bureau of Prisons took control, transforming the military prison into a maximum security penitentiary. Everything about Alcatraz was designed for control: steel-reinforced cells, armed guard towers, and strict discipline. Only the most unmanageable prisoners from other federal prisons were sent here. Alcatraz was officially reborn as America's Devil's Island. Alcatraz quickly filled with names that gripped headlines. Scarface, Al Capone, the Chicago mob boss, was transferred in 1934. He was joined by George Machine Gun Kelly, kidnapper Alvin Karpis of the Mob Barker gang, and the infamous Birdman of Alcatraz, Robert Stroud. These men were considered untouchable on the outside, too powerful to be housed in regular prisons. On the Rock, their influence was stripped away. Here, no gang ruled, no bribes worked, and escape seemed impossible. The island became the nation's ultimate cage for its ultimate criminals. Inside Alcatraz, routine ruled every minute. Inmates awoke at 6:30 a.m., ate breakfast in silence, and marched to work assignments in workshops or laundry. Talking was restricted. Disobedience was punished with solitary confinement in the dreaded D block, where men sat in darkness for days. The cells were small, just 5 feet by 9 feet. Yet, compared to other prisons, food was good, even considered the best in the federal system. Officials believed well-fed prisoners caused fewer problems. Still, isolation and monotony gnawed at men's sanity. Alcatraz was never the largest prison, but it was the strictest. Its purpose wasn't rehabilitation, it was containment. Warden James A. Johnston, the first federal warden, enforced a rule of silence, designed to break criminal alliances. Guards carried loaded rifles, and the bay's icy waters acted as a natural moat. Even family visits were limited and tightly monitored. Inmates lived under constant watch, stripped of power, reputation, and freedom of movement. The Rock wasn't just a prison, it was a machine built to crush ego and enforce obedience. In the early years, Alcatraz enforced one of its most dreaded policies: the rule of silence. Inmates were forbidden from speaking to each other outside of work and meals. Conversations, whispers, even casual greetings could lead to punishment in solitary. The silence turned the prison into a world of echoing footsteps, clanging doors, and unspoken thoughts. Some prisoners described the rule as torture, gnawing at their sanity. Though it was eventually relaxed in the 1930s, its legacy remained, a symbol of how Alcatraz sought to dominate not just bodies, but minds. The recreation yard at Alcatraz offered the only glimpse of freedom. Surrounded by high concrete walls and watchtowers, inmates could play baseball, lift weights, or simply walk laps. But even here, the Rock's philosophy of control showed itself. Guards overlooked every move from armed posts, and the icy winds off San Francisco Bay reminded inmates of the outside world they could not touch. For some, the yard was a relief. For others, it was torture, seeing the skyline of San Francisco glitter in the distance, just out of reach. Life on Alcatraz was not just difficult for inmates, it was harsh for guards too. Families lived on the island, separated from prisoners by walls, but sharing the same isolated rock. Children attended school in San Francisco, ferried daily across the bay. Guards faced constant threats, always aware that a single mistake could cost them their lives. Yet they relied on the same moat of frigid water that trapped inmates. Alcatraz was a fortress, but also a small, tense community where danger and normal life existed side by side. For those who broke the rules, Alcatraz reserved D Block, the prison's punishment wing. Cells here were darker, colder, and more oppressive. The most feared was the Hole, a windowless cell where inmates were locked in total darkness, sometimes left with only bread and water. Prisoners reported hallucinations, despair, and crushing silence during their time there. The Hole became a legend, a warning that disobedience on the rock would be met with swift and brutal consequences. Many men left D Block broken, their spirits shattered beyond repair. Al Capone arrived at Alcatraz in 1934, stripped of the influence he once wielded in Chicago and even at other prisons. Here, bribes were useless, and isolation was absolute. He worked in the laundry, played banjo in the prison band, and suffered from declining health due to syphilis. Once the king of organized crime, Capone became just another number, prisoner number 85. Guards recalled him humming songs and losing his sharpness. Alcatraz succeeded where others had failed. It broke the man who had once broken entire cities. Robert Stroud, known as the Birdman of Alcatraz, was one of the prison's most infamous inmates. Contrary to Hollywood legend, Stroud was not allowed to keep birds at Alcatraz. His bird studies and writings had all been done at Leavenworth Penitentiary. On the Rock, he spent much of his time in segregation. Stroud was intelligent but violent, having murdered a guard before his transfer. His reputation as a scientist-turned-prisoner fascinated the public, yet to many inside Alcatraz, he was just another dangerous inmate confined by walls that even intellect could not escape. Work was central to Alcatraz life. Every able-bodied prisoner had a job: laundry, kitchen duty, tailoring, woodworking, or factory-style tasks that kept the prison running. These jobs were considered a privilege, offering small escapes from the monotony of the cell. Yet discipline never wavered. Prisoners marched in silence, tools were counted obsessively, and guards remained armed at every post. Even a missing screwdriver could trigger a lockdown. Inmates often described the Rock as a paradox, stricter than anywhere else, but also strangely efficient. The food was decent, the work orderly, and the prison rarely faced riots compared to others. Still, the price of order was isolation. Day after day, men labored with the knowledge that their lives were tightly scripted, their individuality erased. The clang of machinery echoed through the island, a reminder that Alcatraz wasn't just a prison, it was a factory of control, where every man was reduced to routine. Communication with the outside world was a privilege tightly controlled. Inmates were allowed to write only a limited number of letters each month, and every word was censored by prison officials. Complaints, coded messages, or attempts to pass along criminal orders were cut out or blocked entirely. Visits were even stricter. Family members sat behind glass partitions, speaking only through telephones while guards listened. For many prisoners, these letters and visits were lifelines, faint reminders of a world that still existed beyond the Rock. Yet for others, contact only deepened their despair, reminding them of families they could not touch, lives they had lost, and futures they would never reclaim. Some men received no mail at all, abandoned by friends and relatives unwilling to remain tied to their criminal past. In a place where silence ruled inside, even censored words from the outside carried immense power, or devastating emptiness. Alcatraz wasn't just about physical imprisonment, it was a psychological war. The isolation, monotony, and constant control eroded minds as much as it confined bodies. Some prisoners described pacing their cells endlessly, staring at the same steel bars until they hallucinated. Others found escape in books, music, or even chess played by shouting moves from cell to cell when guards weren't listening. But for many, despair was overwhelming. Mental illness was common, though rarely treated with compassion. Inmates screamed through the night, banged on walls, or retreated into silence so complete that they seemed to vanish within themselves. Guards witness breakdowns that left men curled on the floors of their cells, rocking back and forth. On the Rock, toughness was survival, but even the hardest criminals were not immune to the crushing weight of isolation. The prison wasn't just designed to contain men, it was designed to slowly break them. From the moment Alcatraz opened, inmates dreamed of escape. The first attempts came in the mid-1930s, when desperate men tried to overpower guards or slip through barred windows. None succeeded. The island's geography made escape nearly impossible. The swirling currents of San Francisco Bay were as deadly as the guards' rifles. The water was frigid, only 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, capable of killing in minutes. Strong tides could sweep even strong swimmers out into the open ocean. Early escapees were either recaptured on the island itself, fished out of the water, or killed in the attempt. Each failure reinforced Alcatraz's reputation as inescapable. Yet these failures also fueled myths. If one man could just beat the system, if one could endure the water, freedom was only a mile and a half away. That small distance, so close to the shining lights of San Francisco, became both hope and torment. One of the earliest serious attempts came in December 1937, when inmates Theodore Cole and Ralph Rowe disappeared into the fog. Both were serving time for bank robbery and had reputations as troublemakers. After months of planning, they sawed through bars in a workshop, slipped past guards, and vanished into the freezing waters of the bay. Their disappearance sparked panic, and an immediate manhunt was launched. For days, search teams scoured the shoreline, but neither man was ever found. Officials insisted they drowned, swept away by currents, yet no bodies were ever recovered. Rumors spread that Cole and Rowe might have reached shore and vanished into San Francisco's underworld. While evidence strongly suggests they perished, the mystery lingered. Their story was the first to challenge Alcatraz's legend as escape-proof, planting a seed of doubt that would grow with every attempt that followed. By 1946, the Rock's iron grip was being tested like never before. Tensions simmered among inmates, and resentment toward the guards boiled beneath the surface. On May 2nd, 6 prisoners, led by career criminal Bernard Coy, launched what became known as the Battle of Alcatraz. Their plan was daring: overpower guards, seize weapons, and fight their way to freedom. Coy meticulously prepared, dieting for weeks to slip through bars in the gun gallery. Once inside, he armed himself with rifles and handguns, then unleashed chaos across the cell house. Guards were taken hostage, and for 2 bloody days, the island became a war zone. The U.S. Marines were even called in, bombarding the prison with grenades and gunfire. When the smoke cleared, 3 inmates and 2 guards were dead, with over a dozen others wounded. The escape had failed, but its violence seared Alcatraz's reputation forever into American memory. June 1962 delivered Alcatraz's most legendary escape attempt. Frank Morse, and brothers Clarence and John Anglin spent months chiseling through cell walls with improvised tools, hiding the noise with music and the debris in pockets. They crafted lifelike dummy heads from soap, toilet paper, and hair to fool guards during bed checks. On the night of June 11th, they crawled through the tunnels they carved, climbed the utility pipes, and launched a makeshift raft built from stolen raincoats. By morning, their cells appeared undisturbed. Guards saw only the decoy heads on their pillows. The discovery of their absence triggered a massive manhunt. The FBI concluded the men drowned in the icy bay. But no bodies were ever found. To this day, theories persist that Morris and the Anglins survived, vanishing into South America or blending into American society. Their story remains Alcatraz's greatest mystery, proof that legends never die. Alcatraz closed its doors as a prison in 1963, but its myths never faded. It was a place of iron discipline, broken spirits, and desperate dreams of freedom. For nearly 3 decades, the Rock stood as America's ultimate fortress, part prison, part psychological experiment. Today, tourists walk the same halls where Capone, Stroud, and Morris once lived, still haunted by the echoes of chains and whispers of escape. Was Alcatraz truly inescapable? Or did a few men defy the impossible? The truth may never be known, but the legend of the Rock will outlive us all.